Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. We have a very special guest today. I've been trying to get Judy Walker on this show for a while, and finally she had
Yes,
some
you
free
have.
time. So Judy is the Senior Vice President of Sales at Anago Cleaning Systems. So Judy joined AFI in August 2001 and became Director of Franchise Marketing in 2002. She was appointed Vice President of Marketing in 2005. However, Judy has been with Anago since 1994, where she joined the company in the telemarketing department. Later, she became the director of telemarketing for the South Florida Master Franchise. Before that, she was assistant director of sales and marketing for Windows on the World restaurant in New York City. Judy also holds a Master of Science in Education degree from Wagner College, is a certified franchise executive, and she's fluent in English, Spanish, and Italian. Judy, thank you for joining us today.
Thank
Wow.
you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be with you.
Wow. Judy, I feel like you are so accomplished from everything that we just heard. But being a native New Yorker myself, knowing that we each have different experiences in New York growing up, I'd love to hear about your childhood, your experiences growing up in New York.
Sure. I was actually born in Astoria, New York, and I was the daughter of an immigrant from Italy, and that was my mom, and my dad was actually raised in New York. My mom, and from an early age, my mother taught me Italian. I did not speak English, actually. Italian was my first language until I went to school. But my mother really molded me into the woman that I am today. She came over as an immigrant from Italy at 17, faced discrimination, as many immigrants did in those years, then went on to get a college degree at Hunter College in New York. She became a teacher. She became the director of financial aid for a college in New York. And she just rose up the ranks and kind of showed me an awful lot of strength, but and really what it was like to be a New Yorker. She kind of adopted that rather as her home. So she was a very big influence in my life, as my dad was. But growing up in New York was interesting and quite opposite from what it's like here in South Florida at this point in my life.
True.
Wow, what an incredible story. So as a kid, Italian was your first language. You went to
Yes.
public school, Catholic school. What did you do, and how did you make the shift from speaking primarily Italian? How did the kids handle you as a
Yeah,
multilingual
it
individual?
it was interesting. I went to Catholic school and from kindergarten onward, and it was a kind of a transition, but she even prepared me for that as I was starting school and would speak to me that at that point then somewhat in both languages, but Italian remained my number one language. And what actually kind of jump ahead to the future, what gives me great pleasure is that both of my children are fluent in Italian. They studied it in college, they studied in Italy and became fluent in Italian. So it's kind of carrying through. And that was a very, very big part of it was difficult starting school and having to adapt to that when I was almost embarrassed, honestly, by the fact that that was my first language and I didn't have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches like the rest of the kids did. I had salami or something similar to
Ooh.
that in my lunchbox. So that was a a difficult time, but I made it through. I survived.
Yeah. You learned how to navigate diversity.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes, most certainly.
So where did franchise come in, or how at what point did franchise come in
Uh,
professional?
well, after working at Windows on the World, which was a really exciting position, I then stayed at home for 11 years as a
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
stay-at-home
slow
mom.
down, slow down. Talk
So
more about Windows of the World because
yeah,
we can't just
Okay.
jump
Yes.
over that. I got to
so
hear more
yeah.
about that.
So I got my degree in teaching and thought from when I was a small child that I wanted to be a teacher. I did it for a year and said, this is not me. I'm just not happy doing this. And one of my sorority sisters from college worked at Windows on the World and said, come on over. There's a position in the marketing department, and I think you'll like that. So I did. And that is where I developed my love of sales and marketing was at the 5 years that I spent at Windows on the World. And it was like a light bulb went off for me that this is my true passion, this is my calling, and this is what I love to do. So it was absolutely great. And then I got pregnant with my first child
Boom.
and decided to, at 9 months pregnant, left Windows on the World. And for the next 11 years, I was a stay-at-home mom. So I went from a really glamorous, wonderful job to then being home with, I raised my two children. Then I subsequently had my second child. And then it was kind of time to do something while my kids were in school. And what could I possibly do? uh, Something that only took a few hours. And a friend told me about this new little company that had started in Coral Springs, Florida, and they were looking for somebody to do telemarketing. Telemarketing. I had been an executive at Windows on the World. I'm going to now go to be a telemarketer. But then I realized that I had been really out of the workforce for an extended period of time. I didn't even know what a fax machine was, which in those days they were still using fax machines. I didn't know a lot about the newest technology or anything. So I guess being a telemarketer wasn't so bad. And it was only 4 hours a day. So, and it was less than 2 miles from my house. So, okay, I'll give it a try. So it was difficult to even show up for the interview because I hadn't interviewed or done anything in a really long time. But I went in, I interviewed with Dave Pavlitz, who was the chairman of the company, and thought, okay, I'll give it a try. And I did. And that was the beginning of my and I often say that that was a time in my life I was in the right place at the right time because
Wow.
today we are, this huge company, and many of the people that I started with are actually still working here today, which I think is wonderful too. We're run very much like I don't only consider them my coworkers, I consider them my friends because we've been working together for such a long time.
Will
Okay, I'll
you?
take a breath and let you
Yeah,
ask
no,
the
I am
next question.
fascinated
Sorry.
with this. I'm fascinated with the story because there's these massive changes
Mhm.
and this glamorous restaurant and this prestigious position to then becoming a mama bear, right? Raising these babies, which is, in my opinion, the most important job any woman can do. If she's able to do it full time, even
Absolutely.
better.
Yes.
To then this kind of, oh, I'm thrown back in the real world and I don't even know how to use a fax machine kind of idea. And then you go to Anago in telemarketing and you meet Dave. Now, tell us a little about Dave. Dave was a force to be reckoned with, from my understanding, and he recognized talent in you early on. Tell us a little bit more about your relationship with Dave, how he ultimately became a mentor to you.
Yes, he did. Yes. He was the second most important, mentor that I had after my mom. Well, working for Dave at that point, the what we did was we were setting up the South Florida master franchise, and we were, sending our FDD in for approval and firming up all the manuals and things like that. Dave was a monster, quite frankly. He was a very, very difficult person to work for. He demanded perfection, and we followed him and we did whatever he asked us to do. There were many, and I say we because there were several of us, as I said, that are still here. And many times I didn't get home, and those 4 hours a day turned into 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Then I started traveling as we sold master franchises. I started traveling throughout the US to train employees. And so it turned out to be then days that I was gone from my family after starting out that 4 hours a day job. But Dave taught me everything I know about the commercial cleaning industry. Um, and he had come from Michigan and moved his family down to South Florida, where we are, and decided that he went to work for a competitor of ours and said, I can do this, but I think I can do it better than they do it, which was typical of Dave. And sure enough, that's how Anago was founded. And the word Anago means to guide or uplift. And we
Oh.
believe that we guide and uplift our employees and our franchisees to better their lives. So he decided on the name, and the rest is just history. But he was, and unfortunately he just passed away a few months ago, but his children run the business today. His son Adam is our CEO and president, and his daughter Lisa is our VP of internal operations. They came into the business from an early age and grew with it. And even when he allegedly retired and kind of left Anago to his children, he still came in to the office every day and maintained an office here. And he would go around and say hello to everyone and what's new and exciting and what's going on in your life. And he was just such a motivational person and a very, very big part of who we all are here.
That's so nice. I mean, it definitely sounds like he left a legacy.
Yes,
Mhm.
without a doubt.
But I'd like to get back to something where we were just talking about these dramatic changes that you went through at different periods of life. And I think that for you to be at like the top of your game at Windows on the World and then stepping into being a stay-at-home mom, I think it takes a lot of humility on your part to step into a telemarketer role, right?
Mhm.
And then when
It did.
yeah. And then when you combine that with the fact that, as a stay-at-home mom, I was a stay-at-home mom. And I know I just didn't stay at home. I know that I volunteered at my son's school. I was his PTA president for a year. I'm sure you did a lot of that. Would that be
Yes,
safe?
I did. Absolutely. I took, I chaperoned all the field trips that my kids went on. As a matter of fact, there was one particular field trip where they said, Mrs. Walker, you've, reached your limit of field trips that you can go on. We need to give other parents a turn. So I still followed the bus.
Right, right. I get it. I get it. I've done that in my day. I get it. But one of the things, the reason why I'm bringing that up again is because there are a lot, and we have a lot of women that listen to the show. And I'm sure that a certain percentage are stay-at-home moms who might be
Mhm.
thinking, contemplating at the back of their minds, what am I going to do afterwards? Right. So I just want to talk to you about transferable skills, right? There are a lot of transferable skills that we as stay-at-home moms cultivate over time? And how do you see your transferable skills as having been applied when you did step back into that telemarketing business with that humility and just taking on this new role, this new chapter of your life, so to speak?
I think from every part of your life and whatever you've done, you kind of take a piece of it with you. And that piece does come back to help you. And I'm not by any means comparing raising children to raising employees, but there are some similarities. And in how you have to be, like, for example, I have a staff of 12 now that report to me, and they're wonderful people, but I have to cut myself into 12 different pieces because they all have different personalities, just like children do when you're raising them. And you're not necessarily raising them all the same way. They have the same values and the same work ethic and whatever it may be, but it has to be adjusted. So you learn to make adjustments. And I think that comes from raising children, and it comes from kind of overseeing employees as well. I don't know
Yeah.
if that directly answers your question, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. And it is a very, very big adjustment because you're used to, my kids still tell me that they're grown obviously now, but they tell me that they still remember coming home and finding a snack every day. And they have very, very clear memories of me being there for them. And that's something you can never get back again. So, when it's possible, do it.
Yeah.
Do it because your kids will remember that when they grow up. Um, Very much so.
Judy, thank you for sharing that because it's so important. And our role as women does change through a lifetime. What I find also interesting, and I'm going to ask you some questions about what's changed, is you were in the sales, marketing, sexy business in New York, at the Tower, right? And now we're with a commercial cleaning business, which on its first blush doesn't seem sexy at all,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So I'm curious about your role in the sales and marketing. What changed from there in New York to now, and what's just changed over time in terms of sales and marketing?
Well, I think the way that we communicate has changed an awful lot. Thinking back to the days of Windows on the World, there was no social media. There were no tools for people to use to there was it was very, very basic.
Hmm.
And now with the advent of how we communicate differently, there's just so many ways out there, but social media being a very, very big part of it. um, Email campaigns. We didn't even have email back
No.
then. So communicating with people was basically done by phone, or, by letter if you were, mailing a letter, but more so by phone. And that's what the sales and marketing team kind of focused on at that time. Now, here at Anago, just as an example, we have a team of 5 people in our marketing department, each one with a different role. So that's how much things have moved forward. And it's so imperative for all of us at any age to keep up with that change because it's changing almost on a daily or weekly basis. Who would have thought 6 months ago there was a thing called AI?
AI, yes.
And here we are today. Everybody knows what AI means, good and bad. So things are changing. That's another difference. Things are changing a lot more quickly than they did back then.
Yeah. And your background and with your mom having to adapt and flex and learn and change, and you had to do the same thing throughout your life and throughout your career, you're still doing that even today, having to
Yes,
learn new technologies, new methodologies, new ways of communicating, including things around social media, AI, where before you just put an ad in a magazine or you sent out.
exactly. And that was it. And having to make those changes as quickly as they're happening at my age brings up another issue, because I'm not that 20 something anymore at Windows on the World. I'm now a lot older than that. And keeping up with it becomes even more of a challenge, but we have to force ourselves to do that. And it's
Yeah.
because it's that important.
Tracy, I know you have a question, but when this old thing comes up, we're the same age, Judy. You and I are
Yes.
the same
Yes.
age. So I'm
Yes, we
going
are.
through the similar kind of thing. But I do think we possess something, and it's what keeps us young and learning, is an insatiable curiosity and a desire,
Agreed.
right? And so we're never going to stop learning. We just didn't grow up with some of this technology. So let's take age off the table because
Yes.
you and I are simpatico and
Yes.
that
And
arena.
we're still here and we're still learning.
Fight it out till
Ain't
the
going
end.
anywhere. Ain't going anywhere.
I'm
No
sorry,
time.
Tracy, you had a question, hon. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, when you touched on this, about the business and we spoke about family, is there some kind of motto or theme that you live according to that when times get tough, you bring it back to that concept?
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. And these are the things that are, this is kind of my guiding. It's love your family, work super hard, but live your passion. And that's really important to me. But I'm going to share something with you. On my desk, my mom kept this at her desk at her office, and I don't know if you can see it. It says, "Keep smiling. It makes people wonder what you've been up to."
It's cute.
And sometimes I look at that one too.
Right.
Oh,
As a-
Nice.
that's a great I'm trying that on. Um, and I think the last two pieces of that motto you have, the work hard and live my passions, I do. It's that first piece that
yes.
I'm not so great at. So how do you do all three? How do you juggle all three pieces?
Yeah, and it's kind of it is difficult, but you have to make time for your children. Both of my children grew up in Anago, meaning that they were, very much a part of all our celebrations. And Dave and Adam and Lisa, and they came to their weddings, and they grew up really close. But I had to separate. And yes, you're right. Loving your family and making time for family is has to be number one.
Yeah.
Most definitely has to be. My daughter lives in the DC area. My son lives here in South Florida. So it's always easy to see him and meet for dinner once in a while. But my daughter, I will always get on a plane and go up and visit her. Usually don't let that too much time pass by. But I try not to let my work overtake my family time. And that's where the balance becomes somewhat difficult.
Yeah.
And I go back to my younger self and when my kids were little and wonder if I could keep that balance
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's tough for a lot of us as
Mhm.
women, trying to juggle a career, work hard, build something at the same nurture, provide quality time with our children, and in my case, also grandchildren and great grandchildren, keep that in balance. And then sometimes our passions are completely different. I know my passions around art and those kinds of things. So you still want to live those. It'd be ideal if you
Absolutely.
combine the other two, but what are some of your passions?
Well, my number one passion is travel. And I, again, don't be surprised, but at least once a year. I travel to Italy, sometimes twice a year, because not only to visit my family there, because I do have family, but every time I go, I discover something new there. And it keeps me connected to my family and reminds me so much of my mom and her upbringing there. So I love the museums. I love art just like you do. So travel is a big thing to me. And of course, being Italian, probably my second passion is cooking. I consider myself to be a pretty darn good cook. I make my own bread. I make my own sauce. Obviously, there is the question of sauce versus gravy, but
Gravy,
we
yes.
call it sauce. And love to make risotto and all kinds of good Italian food. So that is it's not only a passion, but it calms me a lot, cooking. When things get a little hairy and crazy around here, I find it very calming. I'm actually going to Prague in a few weeks, back to my travel. So I'm looking forward to that.
Amazing.
Very cool. So, Rebecca, I think you totally did not do yourself justice. From what I see and what I understand, you are an amazing mom and grandma.
Sure.
I just have to put that out on the table. So don't.
Okay. I'm sure she is.
And second of all, when we work with people in an organization, they really become like second family to us, like great support systems. Do you find that you've had any obstacles, or that you've ever had any situation where you were able to find the support within the organization and, in that type of way?
Yes. I had sometimes you never know how strong you are until you're faced with a very difficult situation. And during my tenure at Anago, my husband unfortunately passed away very suddenly at 49, and I had my two kids were in college at the time. I cannot tell you what my Anago family did for me. Starting with Dave Pavlitz and then working on down. They put my hurricane shutters up. They brought me food. They let me take off as much time as I needed. And that's one of the also main reasons why I'm still here. They are my extended family, and they supported me through a real crisis in my life and a very, very difficult time. And conversely, when some of them have been through difficult situations, I have been there for them as well. And so I'm honored to not only call them my coworkers, but to call them my friends.
I can feel that. I can feel
Beautiful.
it. Which kind of brings me to the name Onago itself, right? It's part of the culture. To actually, maybe you should describe it. What does Onago mean, and how is it really just part of the culture now?
Yeah, the word anago means to guide or uplift, and it has a spiritual connotation. And that's what Dave had in mind when he started the company. He also created our unifying principles. And we have a conference room here in the Anago headquarters office, which we have all our executive meetings in, and plastered on that wall are our 12 unifying principles. And the first one is believe in people, because believing in people is who we are. And the reason and they take up the entire wall of the conference room. And the purpose of having them there is to remind us when we're sitting at a meeting that that's who we are, and that's how we were founded, and that's how the company should be run. And it's promote education is another one. Give people but the believe in people one, the first one, to me is like the most important. And that's what he founded the company on, and that's what we still, the principles that we still follow today. We have about 50 people here at our corporate office in South Florida. And when Adam purchased this building, our CEO, Dave Pavlitz and I stood out in the parking lot and cried when they put the sign Anago on the outside of the building, because we had come so far from this little 2-room office to now a 3-story building with a huge sign out front. So, yeah.
I think I would cry too.
Yeah.
Anago, boom, up there.
Yeah.
Get that.
You've talked a lot about the culture and the feel, which really does set Anago apart from other franchises, other commercial cleaning. You also have a different business model that you guys use to grow. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Absolutely. We are actually a 3-tier franchise system, Anago Cleaning Systems being the parent company. And then what we sell here are master franchises, where we sell a major metropolitan area like Houston or Phoenix or whatever it may be. And we sell that major metro area. And then that master franchise owner, who's typically a white collar executive coming out of, kind of tired of making money for someone else and wants to make money for themselves. So we've had CEOs, VPs purchase master franchises. Then that master franchise is not in the cleaning business. That master franchisee is in the sales and marketing business. What he does is sell unit franchises to individuals looking to open a cleaning business. And then the individual opens their cleaning business, and the master handles all the sales, marketing, collections, billing, everything for that individual's cleaning business. So all he or she has to do is run their small cleaning business, and the master takes care of everything for them. So now, after just over 30 years that the company's been in existence, I think we're at 50 master franchise locations across the US and Canada. And we have over 1,800 of those unit franchisees coming out of those offices. And we are on a real upswing, in the sense that you can imagine during COVID, commercial cleaning we were considered an essential business, and disinfection was the key word of the time, because just having employees clean your office wasn't good enough anymore. You needed a professional company to come in and clean. So it was a good time for us, a bad time, unfortunately, for the country, but for us, it represented a lot of growth, which was great.
Amazing. So I see you as such a powerhouse, Judy. Has there ever been a time that fear stopped you from doing something, or if that type of situation presented itself, like how did you work your way around it and stuff?
I think that return to the workforce after being a stay-at-home mom was actually, it was my husband who was pushing me, and I was really afraid to do that, because knowing that I had been out of the workforce for so long and all I knew was volunteering and baking brownies and stuff, I wasn't using my brain really very, very much. My kids were really little. So that was a really scary deal. And then making it even worse was going to interview with Dave Pavlitz, who was very brusque and he was a powerhouse. To me, he was a powerhouse, and he mellowed, by the way, quite a bit with age. But at that time, he was kind of a frightening, sort of imposing person. And so the thought of going for the interview I was scared to death. And then actually interviewing with him scared me even more. But but yet there was something about it that said, this is where you need to be. And I guess eventually, the first week, probably every day, I almost, said I'm not going back again tomorrow because it was scary, and it was, a lot to learn, and I wasn't sure I could do it, and but I went back every day, and I'm glad that I did. I'm
Yeah.
really glad I did.
What would you say to somebody who's in that situation now?
Do it.
Do it.
Just do it. Like Nike says, just do it. What's the worst that can happen? If you don't like it, don't go back. Give it up. Try something different, but just do it. Yeah, because you never know where that's going to lead.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me because you've mentioned it a couple of times now that you sensed that's where you needed to be, even though you were frightened. And even though this man was imposing and scary, who later became a dear friend and a beautiful
Yes.
mentor, and look at you now, kind of thing. So something inside, or some way, you kind of knew. You kind of knew to
Yeah.
face the fear and do it anyway, right?
Yes, exactly. And then as I, got more involved in the business, and he taught me more, and the people I worked with kind of inspired me as well. I overcame that fear, but it took a little bit. It certainly took a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, girls. This conversation could go on for hours. You know that you are absolutely fascinating, Judy. I want to make sure though that the folks listening, if they want to learn more about Anago, and this very unique culture and this very unique business model, and obviously along with that, a very unique individual that is a perfect fit within your system. Tell us how they can learn more
Absolutely.
about the system, about you, and as well as the system, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. For me, they're more than welcome to email me. My email is judy@anagocleaning.com. It's very easy to remember. To learn more about Anago in general, the business model, our culture, our background, our web address is anagocleaning.com. So, and by all means, feel free. It's got a wealth of information, some really good videos of some of our master franchise owners, and just the story of the services that we offer, any type of commercial cleaning. And definitely visit anagocleaning.com. It's ANAGO cleaning.com.
All right. Before we go off and Tracy does her beautiful wrap up, I want to hear some Italian.
That's great.
I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm asking too much, but this motto that you have around family and work and passion,
Sure.
can you make that same statement in Italian for us?
Yes, of course. Devi dare molto amore alla tua famiglia, devi lavorare molto, molto, con molto amore, anche con molto amore, e la passione devi sempre avere nella tua vita.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, it gives me
That
chills.
sounded amazing.
I want to do it, whatever it is. I
It
want
sounded
to do
like
it.
so romantic and
It
amazing.
is. It's a great language. It really is. It is,
So
without a
Tracy,
doubt.
over to you, hon. Wrap up thoughts about beautiful Judy Walker.
I've been thinking about this wrap up thought, and for me, I feel like, Judy, I think that I speak on behalf of our audience listeners as well as myself when I say that I find you very inspiring. And you, to me, seem to embody Anago. Like what Anago means to guide and uplift, you embody that with the way you tackle dramatic changes in your life. And I just hope that there are listeners out there, and I know there will be. And I have the chills right now when I say this, that are listening to this, that are wondering, can I do it? Should I do it? Maybe they're a stay-at-home mom. Maybe they're not. Maybe they've been dabbling in franchise. I want them to listen to this episode and say, you know what, Anago, if Judy can do that, I can do it too.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Thank you for your kind words. I really, really do appreciate that. It has been one hell of a life so far, and Rebecca, you and I have a lot more living to do.
We do. Look out, world.
I'm not leaving you out, Tracy, but I'm just Rebecca and I being the same age.
We're twins.
I get it.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today, Judy, and to our listeners here at the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. We'll see you next week for another episode.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.